Greetings, everyone. This is Jed Schlackman. I'm a holistic counselor and energy healer. For this video, I want to talk about both the positive and negative, or light and shadow sides of disease identification and disease awareness efforts. So this needs a lot of context, in a sense, a lot of explaining to help whoever's listening understand both of these potentials. So when someone is experiencing some type of physical or mental health issue, there's usually some emotions that are generated in regards to that situation. And it could vary between the person and the type of issue that's presenting. When people experience some physical or medical type health issue, there's often some feeling of anger or grief or fear. Sometimes there could be shame. And similarly with mental health issues, in that case there's even more often some sense of shame or a feeling of being stigmatized based upon those challenges. So let's suppose that you felt pretty healthy for much of your life, and then some significant physical health issue arises. You might have some grief over the loss of your health. So you're living a full, vibrant life, and then some illness or injury perhaps happens, and you're no longer able to do everything you used to do. That creates some sense of loss in many cases. There could also be a kind of anger or frustration, a sense of why me? What did I do to deserve this? So those types of thoughts can arise as well. And of course there's fear or anxiety about the prognosis. So is this something that you can recover from? Is it something that could get progressively worse, that could be fatal illness? So all of those different concerns, all those different emotions, all of that can manifest and become a part of the person's experience at that point. When someone's encountering that, it's really quite appealing to find some form of external support, a group of people who you think can understand what you're going through, who can kind of commiserate with you or share in your process and help you feel not isolated but connected. As human beings, we naturally like to have a sense of connection and belonging, to feel that we're supported, that we're understood, that we're accepted, that we're not being judged or criticized or looked down upon. So there are many groups out there who are promoting some form of advocacy or awareness or healing support for various physical and mental health issues. There's potential benefit from that, but there's also a potential limitation or hazard that could be created when you're involved in those particular group efforts, support groups or advocacy groups. The benefit could be seemingly obvious, that you're getting some form of support or connection, people that are giving you validation. However, all these different organizations tend to form some type of construct or consensus about how they view that particular condition and what ways people should respond to it, what treatments are potentially beneficial, Is it something that you're going to have as a lifelong condition? All these different aspects of what you're encountering, there tends to be some kind of groupthink or a shared view or perspective within a particular organization. So that can become a limitation if you're encountering some new perspective or some other treatment or healing resources that haven't been embraced or accepted by that group. Then you might at that point start to get shunned if you try to go outside of what they consider appropriate. So that's a potential hazard or limitation there. Another potential limitation or hazard, I would say, is that you might become overly attached to that group, to that disease or illness identity, for a sense of connection. So if this is the one place in your life where you're receiving that form of validation or support or connection, but it's attached to you having this particular condition or disorder, then that creates kind of a secondary gain or benefit for you from having this illness debilitating you, or this particular disability that's arisen. So that might create some blockage or resistance in yourself to evolving or shifting beyond that to potentially recovering or healing, because in that case there's a part of you that actually feels it needs to have this condition or issue in order to get something that subconsciously at least appears beneficial. With any particular condition or illness people have, on some level there may be some subconscious benefit that's being sought from having that state of disease or illness. So whether you're looking at this from the perspective of joining a support or advocacy group, or just looking at reasons that keep you in that state or perpetuate your state of illness, this is something to consider, the idea of a secondary gain or benefit. There's also the reality that the people in these groups, they appreciate having you and whoever else is a part of their group. They appreciate this community that they've developed and the people that are part of it, and they may resist the potential for someone leaving their group, even if the reason that person might leave the group is due to the person finding some healing or recovery and no longer fitting the diagnosis for that condition, that disease or disorder. So it kind of reinforces their identity for you to continue in that same identity. And their culture might resist having someone actually recover and heal and move beyond it. And they may also resist the idea that there is some form of treatment or process out there that will help people move beyond that diagnosis or that disorder. One common group that people have joined over many decades is Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step support groups that function in a similar manner. And in the field of mental health, in particular in the area of addictions and substance abuse, this is something that is often recommended and seen as a helpful resource to help people overcome or, in a sense, fight their addiction or disease, however that might be labeled. And there are different models, you could say, or paradigms through which people perceive addiction or other conditions. So in that case, people often refer to addiction as a disease, using that medical terminology, and they view it as a lifelong condition where you have to continue through this process and be part of this group for the rest of your life, and you could never say that you've actually completely recovered or healed from being an addict. You're always in that perspective or paradigm considered vulnerable to relapsing, so they see being an addict as kind of a permanent part of your identity, and the only solution is to continue in their program, in their 12-step model. Now, being part of that group certainly has support in terms of helping validate a person, helping them feel they're not alone, that they're supported in dealing with this challenge. It creates a community, a sense of belonging and connection, which in itself is therapeutic and beneficial. It gives people practical steps and processes to use to help them maintain a state or a condition of sobriety. So that's certainly valuable. However, there is also a potential limitation, since they're promoting the belief, the identification with being an addict, so using that label to define oneself, to see that as part of your identity, when our true or underlying essential identity is not at all an addict. We're just a spiritual being, a pure consciousness taking on this human role, this human form, this human personality and experiences. And addiction is a common experience, but it's not ever permanent. It's not a true part of our core identity. It's something that we experience facing and confronting and working through. But we're so much more beyond that, and we're not limited by that. We don't have to see ourselves or label and define ourselves as that identity. So this is kind of a paradox to consider, that we have these resources that in many ways are beneficial or therapeutic. They help us in some ways, but in certain contexts and in certain areas, let's say, they could become limiting and actually become barriers to us progressing further in our process of healing or self-integration. And this is the case whether it's a mental health condition or a physical health condition, and really those aren't completely separate. It's pretty well known and widely observed that things going on physically are generally reflecting in some way, if not directly triggered or caused by some type of psychological or emotional issue that's present in our life. So we want to really look at things in that holistic way, and also to realize that anything that's beneficial is not absolute. At some point it could become an obstacle or barrier for us, or we could overdo some things where they may have been beneficial to some point, but then we take something too far and it pushes us out of balance in some other way. So this isn't to judge or condemn any particular form of advocacy or support or awareness campaign that is out there for any particular condition or illness or disease, but it's to help us observe them and consider working with them from another perspective where we can be mindful about both the positive potential benefits and also the negative potential limitations. I hope that this discussion has given each of you some insights and ideas, some things to ponder and contemplate as you go forward on your path. For now, I'd like to wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.